Obama told them to. And they redacted it because they didn't want you to know that. But this numbskull McCabe wrote about it in his own book. What's redacted is clearly Obama or PDB staff. Presidential Daily Brief. Obama did it. How did the targeting of General Mike Flynn happen? We know now, if you listen to Friday's show, that his December 29, 2016 phone call, he's the incoming national security advisor, but Barack Obama is still the president, 2016. We know that call was monitored because we have the transcripts of the call where he allegedly discusses expulsions and sanctions, according to the FBI, with the Russian ambassador. The question is, if he was not unmasked on this date, the call happens December 29, 2016. We know that. He was not unmasked. There was no unmasking request on December 29th of 2016. None. There isn't another unmasking request of Mike Flynn's name until January 4th. Then how the hell did they get the call? Well, the FBI had been monitoring these calls because they probably had a FISA on the Russians, a warrant to spy on the FISA because they're foreigners. There's a foreign government. The FBI probably had an open FISA on the Russians. Can we all accept that? So they're listening in on the Russians. But the question I was asked on Fox and Friends this morning by Brian Kilmeade, a brilliant question. I heard him talking about it before in my earpiece. During the break, you chat with, I heard him talking about it. He asked the question of an FBI official. If they were monitoring the Russians, and Joe, I need you here as a referee. I'm serious for a minute. If this doesn't make sense, please stop me. If the FBI has an open FISA on the Russian ambassador, right, to listen into his calls, how the hell did they find the Mike Flynn call? He's probably making hundreds of calls a day. How did they know it was Mike Flynn? Well, the answer is very simple. Somebody told the FBI, go find that damn call. That's it. It's no more complicated. How do I know that? You're tracking me. Audience referee and ombudsman, Joe Armico. You got me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Simple. Yeah. Right,
very simple. Somebody told the FBI, you've been recording these calls with the Russians. Flynn spoke with the Russian. You go find it. How do we know that? Don't take my word for it, Daddy-O. Just listen to Deputy Director Andy McCabe in his own book. Big hat tip at Walk of Fire on Twitter. Stephen McIntyre and others who've done great work picking this stuff out. Here's Andy McCabe's book. The former deputy director of the FBI. These are Walk of Fire's highlights from Twitter. This is McCabe's own book. When he writes in his book that, quote, the PDB staff decided to write an intelligence assessment as to why Putin made the choice he did, talking about the Putin's response to Obama's expulsions of the Russian diplomats and the sanctions. Come back to me for a second. I want to go back to that, if you don't mind, Paula. Sorry to bust your chops over there, but this is going to be important. On the call on December 29th, Flynn talks with the Russian ambassador in response to Obama kicking out these Russian diplomats just days earlier. Of course, Flynn, as the incoming national security advisor, is going to talk to the Russian ambassador who wants to know, hey, you're the incoming national security advisor to soon-to-be President Trump. What should we do here? President Obama just kicked out our Russian diplomats. Flynn says to them, hey, just respond in a reciprocal manner. Now, come back to that. Obama, air quotes here, trying to get to the reason Putin responded in a reciprocal manner, then, according to Andy McCabe, going back to the book, orders the intelligence, going back to the book, we missing the book? There you go, sorry. Okay. The PDB staff decided to write an intelligence assessment as to why Putin made the choice he did. Who's the PDB staff? That doesn't stand for peanut butter and Dan Bongino. It stands for the Presidential Daily Brief. The Presidential Daily Brief staff issued a request to the intelligence community. It goes on. Are we following here? The presidential briefers, of course, you think Obama didn't know about this? Tasked the FBI to go get the call. That's why it wasn't unmasked. It goes on. In response to that request, the FBI queried our own holdings. The FBI already had the call because of a FISA on the Russians. We came across information indicating that General Flynn, the president-elect's nominee for National Security Advisor, had held several conversations with the Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak. Let's go to page 2 here, in which the sanctions were discussed. Of course, that didn't happen. It was about expulsions, but that's from Friday's show. This information was something we had from December 29th. Hold on. Come back to me for a second. Paul is going to kill me at the end. Do not divorce me today. Wait till tomorrow's show, please. Love my wife. We had a great weekend. Couple things should jump out at you there. A couple of big things, huge things in the words of Donald Trump. Andrew McCabe, deputy director of the FBI, acknowledges, number one, we already had the call, meaning what? There was obviously a warrant to listen in on the calls of the Russians, including Kislyak. He says it. We already had the call. He also says we went and searched our holdings pursuant to a request from the president's own briefers. Obama did. It's right there. Don't take my word for it. Just listen to the deputy director of the FBI. It's in his book. He also indicates that McCabe, in his book, that they had the call since December 29th. For the umpteenth thousandth time, why is that important? Because there's no unmasking request on December 29th. The FBI and the media's story has been from the start. Follow me here. Oh, this is where it gets important. They were saying, we just listen in on the Russians regularly, which we do. We always let the Russians spy on us. We spy on them. No secret. Nothing untoward about that. We'd be derelict in our intelligence community if we weren't listening in on the Russians. They're a nuclear power. So the media cover-up story, because they're full Pravda. The media is in full gaslighting propaganda mode to try and cover up that Obama ordered the surveillance hit on Flynn. The media story's been, we just listen in on the Russians, and golly, we found this Flynn thing, and we saw a name of an American talking to the Russians about ambassadors. We didn't know who it was. It said USPR, U.S. person, and it was masked, covered up, redacted, and we just, we ordered an unmasking just innocently, just to figure out who they were talking to. That is not what happened. That is not what happened. This was a direct request from the White House, and of course it involved a surveillance to go pick up Mike Flynn, which the FBI already had. Go back to that if you don't mind, page 2. Nice, look at that. Nice, quick on the switch there. The PDB request brought it to our attention. Andy McCabe's own words. An analyst shared it with me. I shared it with Comey. Comey shared it with the DNI, Jim Clapper, and Clapper briefed it to Obama. Guys, ladies, I don't know what's complicated about this in the media. How are you missing this story? The FBI deputy director, in responding to a tasking, and in his testimony, we covered that on Friday. In other words, someone tasked us with finding this Flynn phone call. It's all you need to know, that whoever briefed him or asked him was redacted. In other words, Andy McCabe swears, puts his right hand up, goes up to Congress, swears to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And in his testimony, he told Congress who asked him to find the Flynn phone call. They already had. Forget this unmasking. Throw it in the garbage. I'll show you that in a second, too. There's no request on that. They already had the call because they were listening in on the Russians. But Kill Me again asks this brilliant question. How did they find Flynn's call if they were just listening in on the Russian side? Because Obama told them to. And they redacted it because they didn't want you to know that. But this numbskull, McCabe, wrote about it in his own book. What's redacted is clearly Obama or PDB staff. Presidential Daily Brief. Obama did it.
You just heard The Dan Bongino Show. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud. And follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 @DBongino.